Hello, this is Paranormal Girl, and continuing my dragon series, I will now talk about the dragons of China. Some individuals suffer from the misconception that the Chinese dragon is a symbol of evil. The erroneous belief stems from the mythology of the Western world, where the dragon was thought to abduct maidens, wreak havoc on the populace, steal gold, and destroy villages. In the medieval context, the Western dragon was often the symbol of Satan incarnate. This is not so in the dragons of the Orient. In fact, it's just the opposite. The dragons of China and Japan are almost exclusively benevolent, mythological creatures. In fact, they are so different in nature from the Western dragons, it may be more reasonable to consider them as dissimilar creatures, rather than as the same creature interpreted differently. The Chinese call the dragon Lung, which means long, because it is deaf. It is the largest of scaly animals, and it has the following 9 characteristics. Its head is like a camel's. Its horn is like a deer's. Its eyes are like a hare's. Its ears are like a bull's. Its neck is like an iguana. Its belly is like a frog. And its scales are like those of a carp. Its paws are like a tiger. And its claws are like an eagle's. It has 9 times 9 scales, it being the extreme of a lucky number. On each side of the dragon's mouth are whiskers. Under its chin, or floating just out of reach, is a bright pearl. On top of its head, the Po Shan, or foot rule, without which it cannot ascend to heaven. The scales of the dragon's throat are reversed. When exhaling, its breath changes into clouds, from which it can come either fire or rain. The dragon is fond of eating the flesh of sparrows and swallows. It is afraid of the mineral iron and swords made of iron. The dragon shuns contact with the centipede and a silk dye of 5 colors. Dr. S. Wells Williams says of the Chinese dragon, its voice is like the jingling of copper pans. It's possible that there may be a connection between the dragon's love of eating swallows or sparrows and the habits of crocodiles, who lay basking with jaws agape and allow birds to move in and out of their mouths, picking their teeth. The dragon's fear of iron is well documented, as his love of swallows, and it is said that he can be killed only by a single needle of iron, which conjures up a mental picture of the conquering hero's lance. Dragons were believed to lay eggs, and the young dragon to remain in its egg for 3,000 years, 1,000 of those in water, 1,000 in the mountains, and 1,000 in the land of men. These eggs may occasionally have been snakes' eggs, but more often they were beautiful stones of 5 colors, which gave off water, or at least moisture, when rain was about. It was unwise to be in the possession of one at the moment of birth, for it would hatch in the form of a tiny worm or snake and grow within minutes into a full-sized dragon, which would whirl up into the sky in a thunderstorm, tearing its way through the roof. Whirlwinds and water sprouts are thus explained as a young dragon ascending to heaven. Empty dragon eggs are said to be preserved in some monasteries, even taking the form of an exceptionally beautiful stone with a small hole in it. And one monastery preserved a dragon egg which had died, that it stopped giving off moisture. The fetus was said to be visible inside. Dragon eggs, incidentally, should not be confused with thunderstones, which are prehistoric stone weapons once considered by the Chinese and by the Japanese to be thunderbolts. The eastern dragons were assuredly weather lords. Floods were caused by dragons fighting in the water and storms by dragons fighting in the air. Lightning was heavenly fire sent to stop the dragons' fight. For dragons fear fire. This last might be considered odd, in view of the dragon's own fiery breath. But the Chinese writer Wang Fu said dragon fire and human fire are opposite. If dragon fire comes into contact with wetness, it flames, and if it meets water, it burns. If one drives it away by the means of fire, it stops burning, and its flames are extinguished. Legends of the Dragon. The myriad legends of the Chinese dragon permeate ancient Chinese civilization and shape their culture even today. Its benevolence signifies greatness, goodness, and blessings. Instead of being feared and hated, the Chinese dragons were highly respected creatures of good fortune that bring ultimate abundance, prosperity, and good fortune. Chinese mythology says dragons control the rain, the rivers, the lakes, and the seas. Many Chinese cities have pagodas where people used to burn incense to ask the dragons to favor their crops or change the weather. Dragons are referred as the divine mythical creature. As an animal possessed the magical abilities, the Chinese dragon is able to shrink to the size of a silkworm and then swell up to fill the entire space between heaven and earth. It can make itself visible or invisible as it so chooses. It can take on human form and that of another animal to carry out some secret mission. Everything connected with Eastern dragons is blessed. The year of the dragon that takes place over 12 years is lucky. Present-day Oriental astrologers claim that children born during dragon years enjoy health, wealth, and long life. From 1964 to 1976 were dragon years. Dragons are so wise that they have been royal advisors. The 13th century Cambodian king spent his nights in a golden tower, where he consulted with the real ruler of the land, a 9-headed dragon. Eastern dragons are vain, even though they are wise. They are insulted when a ruler doesn't follow their advice or when people don't honor their importance. Then, by thrashing about, dragons either stop making rain or cause water shortages, or they breathe black clouds that bring storms and floods. Types of dragons. There are more than one type of dragon depicted in Chinese art. In early times, there were 4 main kinds of dragon, with many other subdivisions. The legendary Yellow Emperor wears dragon robes, Heavenly Dragon. The heavenly or celestial dragon, Tian Long, was the celestial guardian that protected the heavens, supported the mansions of the gods, and shielded them from decay. The Tian Long could fly and are depicted with or without wings, and they are always drawn with 5 toes, while all other dragons are shown with 4 or 3 toes. A spiritual dragon. Spiritual dragons, Shenlong, were the weather makers. These giants floated across the sky and due to their blue color that changed constantly were difficult to see clearly. Shenlong governed the wind, the clouds and the rain, on all which the agrarian life depended. Chinese people took great care to avoid offending them, for if they grew angry, or felt neglected, the result was bad weather, drought or flood. The Earth Dragon. The Earth Dragon. Dragons that ruled the rivers, springs and lakes were called Earth Dragons. Dai Long. They hide in the depths of deep watercourses in grand palaces. Many Chinese fairy tales spin yarns of men and women taken in to these submarine castles to be granted special favors or gifts. Some of the Dilong even mated with women to produce half-human dragon children. The treasure dragon. Believed to live in caves deep in the earth, the Fu Can Long, or treasure dragon, had the charge of all the precious jewels and metals buried in the earth. Each of these dragons had a magical pearl that was reputed to multiply if it was touched. This pearl was a symbol of the most valuable treasure, wisdom. Over the ages, many of the forms and hybrid animals related to the Chinese dragons have emerged as part of dragon lore. There are said to be the 9 distinct offshoots of the dragon that are carved as mythical symbols on doors, gates, swords, and other implements as means of protection and harbingers of good fortune. The pearl dragon. The luminous ball or pearl, often depicted under the dragon's chin or seen to be spinning in the air, pursued by 1 or 2 dragons, is thought to be a symbolic representation of the sacred pearl of wisdom, or yang energy. Pearl symbolism, like lunar symbolism, arises from the Daoist roots, and the connections are extremely complex. This pearl can be said to stand most often for truth and life, perhaps even everlasting life, which is made available to those who perceive the truth and attain enlightenment. The dragon's pearl can also be thought of as a symbol for universal Qi, the progenitor of the all energy and creation. The dragons seem to be depicted in attitudes of pursuit. He is seen to be reaching out eagerly to clutch at the elusive object, mouth open in anticipation and eyes bulging with anticipation of achieving the prize afforded by clutching the pearl. In connection with the dragon and the pearl has been called the image of thunder, of the moon, of the sun, of the egg emblem, of the dual influences of nature, and the pearl of potentiality. The pearl is often depicted as a spiral or a globe, and in some paintings it's sometimes red, sometimes gold, sometimes a bluish white or a true pearl. The pearl is often accompanied by little jagged flashes that seem to spark out from it like flames, and it's almost always an appendage in the form of a small undulating sprout, not unlike the first young shoot from a bean. In Daoist concepts, the moon, pearls, dragons and serpents are inextricably linked. Like the snake that is reborn when it sheds its skin, the moon is reborn each month, and both are symbols of immortality. Like the dragon, the moon is always associated with water. Its undeniable power over the tides is believed to extend to all liquids on the earth. The dragons that lived in the sea were said to be inordinately fond of pearls and collected them and watched over them in great submarine palaces. The Julong Baguzang dragons. The first Gua of Yin Qian, which is heaven, is associated with the Azu dragons of the sky. As the Li family developed the Baguzan of Li, Qing Yan, for their own use as martial art masters, the dragon became to them a symbol of each of the Gua of the Yin. The symbolism of a dragon representing the 8 Gua was the most likely inspired by the 9 dragon spirit screen that stands on the shore of the North Lake at Beijing. This screen is of brick and gilded stone depicting 9 coiling, wreathing dragons. Mr. Li Long Dao said that each of the Gua were like dragons, each with distinct personalities and powers. He claims that when one began to understand the secrets of these dragons that guarded the 8 Ying symbols, one could let the dragon begin to teach the true power. Shifu Li said that in meditation, dreams, and during practice, the 9 dragons will visit those who are ready to receive their knowledge and show them the way to use the 8 powers. Finally, after many years of study, practice, and meditation, the supreme dragon of the heavens will impart the great knowledge, and we will see that all is one. This was, of course, just a colourful way of saying that if we study the Ying along with the martial art of Julong Baguzhang practice and train both the mind and the body, then our unconscious mind will start to develop insight into the nature of each concept as presented in the art. In time, we will come to understand how to move and change as effortlessly as the mythological dragons of Chinese legend.